The council chamber stretched wide like a metal canyon. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy sat in curved rows that rose toward the ceiling. Strange lights cast shadows on faces that belonged to creatures Admiral Tae-ho Kim had only seen in files. Some had scales that caught the light, others had skin like living crystal. A few looked like they were made of pure energy wrapped in metal suits. Tae-ho sat in the human section with Captain Bo-Ram Lee and Ambassador Woo-Jin Park. Their seats were in the back corner. New members always got the worst spots. 50 years of watching from the edges of space had earned them the right to sit here. Nothing more. The emergency session had been called 3 hours ago. Ships across the galaxy had received the same message. The Void Seekers had returned. High Marshal Vextar stood at the center podium. His reptilian body was twice the size of any human. Scars covered his green scales like a map of old battles. When he spoke, his voice boomed through speakers that made the air shake. Council members, we face the greatest threat in 1,000 years. The Void Seekers have destroyed 3 colony systems in the Outer Rim. Bellator Prime, New Haven, and the mining station at Kepler's Edge. All gone. No survivors. Gasps and hisses filled the chamber. Some beings made sounds that translators could not turn into words. Fear had a smell that crossed all species lines. Tae-ho could taste it in the recycled air. Images appeared on the massive screens above them. What had once been thriving worlds were now empty space. Not even debris remained. The Void Seekers did not just destroy. They erased. Commander Ziloth floated near the podium. Her crystalline body caught the light and threw rainbows across the chamber walls. When she spoke, her voice was like wind chimes in a storm. The enemy moves with technology we do not understand. Our scout ships report that Void Seeker vessels phase through our shields like they do not exist. They appear without warning and vanish before our weapons can lock on. Traditional fleet formations are useless against them. Bo-Ram leaned forward, in her seat. She had been studying the tactical displays since they appeared. Her fingers moved in small patterns as she calculated firing solutions and defensive positions. Old habits from the academy. They are using the same strategies that failed 1,000 years ago, she whispered to Tae-ho. The Admiral nodded. He had read the historical files. The last Void Seeker War had lasted 300 years. Billions had died before the enemy simply vanished. No one knew why they left or where they went. Vexitar activated a holographic battle map. Red dots showed Void Seeker positions, blue dots marked Allied fleets. The red was spreading like infection through healthy tissue. We will deploy Battle Group 7 to Sector 12. Battle Group 3 will hold position at the Centauri Gate. Our defensive line will stretch from the Vega system to the Arcturus. Belt. Standard formation. Standard tactics. Tae-ho raised his hand. The gesture looked small in the vast chamber. Several beings near him turned to stare. Some made noises that might have been laughter. High Marshal, may I request access to the tactical data? Silence fell like a weight. Vextar's yellow eyes found the human section. His head tilted in what might have been confusion or annoyance. You wish to review military intelligence, human? Yes. Sir, my staff would like to analyze the enemy patterns. More sounds that were definitely laughter now. A being with too many arms slapped what might have been knees. Another creature that looked like a walking tree made creaking noises. Commander Ziloth drifted closer to the human section. Light played through her body like water through ice. Admiral Kim, your species has been part of this council for only 50 years. You have 1 star system and perhaps 30 ships worthy of deep space travel. The Saurian Empire has protected this galaxy for 5,000 years. The Etherian Collective has fought wars since before your species discovered fire. She paused. The silence stretched long enough to be uncomfortable. What could you possibly understand about warfare on this scale? Woo-Jin started to stand, but Tae-ho touched his arm. The ambassador sat back down. Politics had rules. War had different ones. We understand that the current strategy is not working, Tae-ho said. His voice was calm and carried clearly through the chamber. Vexitar's tail lashed behind him. Not working? We have not yet engaged the enemy in full battle. Because they will not let you. Boram said. She had not asked permission to speak. They choose when and where to fight. They control the engagement parameters. That means they control the war. The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Beings stood and pointed with whatever they used for hands. Translators struggled to keep up with the flood of outraged voices. Silence, Vexitar roared. The sound echoed off the walls until the chamber fell quiet again. Captain Lee, you are out of order. She is also correct, Teho said. Xyloth spun to face him fully. Rainbow light flashed through her crystal body. Humans have been in space for less than a century. Your homeworld still bears the scars of your primitive conflicts. You fight with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. We have moved beyond such barbaric methods. Have you moved beyond losing? Boram asked. The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire. No one spoke. No one moved. Vexitar opened his mouth to respond when alarms began to sound. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber. Emergency broadcasts flooded the communication channels. Battle Group 7 has been destroyed, came a voice over the speakers. Complete loss, no survivors. Void Seekers vanished before reinforcements arrived. The silence that followed was different from before. This was the silence of fear becoming reality. Teho stood slowly. High Marshal, with respect, your standard tactics just cost you an entire battle group. Perhaps it is time to consider non-standard approaches. Vexitar stared at him. The reptilian warrior had fought in dozens of conflicts. He had never lost a fleet in the first engagement. His tactical training came from military academies older than human civilization. What do you propose, human? Give us access to your intelligence files. Let us study the enemy. We might see something you have missed. Laughter started again, but it sounded forced now. Uncertain. Commander Xyloth floated higher, her crystalline form catching the emergency lights. Very well. You may observe our planning sessions. But understand this, Admiral Kim. War is not a game. Lives depend on sound strategy and proven tactics. Your species may find the reality of galactic conflict more complex than your simple minds can grasp. Teho nodded politely. Thank you, Commander. We look forward to learning from your experience. Boram caught something in his tone that the aliens missed. She had served with him long enough to know when he was being polite and when he was being dangerous. Right now, he was being both. As the council session broke up, aliens gathered in groups to discuss the crisis. They spoke in low voices about fleet movements and resource allocation, traditional concerns for traditional warfare. The three humans walked toward the exit in silence. They had work to do. How long do you think their next strategy will last? Wu Jin asked as they reached the corridor. Teho checked his watch. Battle Group 3 will be gone within 18 hours. And then? Boram asked. Then they will be ready to listen to ideas they think are crazy. The corridor stretched ahead of them, leading back to their quarters and their planning rooms. Behind them, the greatest military minds in the galaxy continued to fight the last war, while their enemy prepared for the next one. The Void Seekers had returned. But they had never faced humanity before. That was about to change everything. The Saurian flagship Apex Predator hung in space like a metal mountain. Its hull stretched for 3 kilometers and bristled with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Teho Kim stood at the observation deck watching smaller ships dock with the massive vessel. Emergency meetings had been called across the fleet. 18 hours had passed since the council session. Battle Group 3 was gone, just like Teho had predicted. Captain Boram Lee walked up beside him carrying a data pad. Her face showed no emotion, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the device. The casualty reports? Teho asked. 43 ships, 80,000 crew members. The Void Seekers hit them during a standard patrol formation. Same pattern as before. Appear, destroy, vanish. Ambassador Wu Jin Park joined them at the window. His diplomatic uniform looked out of place among the military personnel rushing through the corridors behind them. The council is in panic mode. Half the members want to evacuate the outer colonies. The other half want to throw everything we have at the enemy. Both reactions will get more people killed, said a new voice. They turned to see Fleet Admiral Dayun Choi approaching. She had arrived on the last transport from Earth along with additional human military advisors. Her black uniform bore no decorations, but every officer who saw her stepped aside. Daun, Tai-Ho nodded. What do our analysts say? The same thing Boram figured out yesterday. The enemy is not fighting a war. They are conducting a hunt. They pick targets that cannot escape and cannot fight back effectively. Classic predator behavior. General Hyun Woo Song appeared behind Da-un. His ground forces uniform was practical, gray without shine or ceremony. Scars on his hands spoke of battles fought with more than words and planning. Any species that survives becomes a predator or becomes prey, Hyun Woo said. These void seekers think they are the only predators in this galaxy. Alarms echoed through the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Another emergency message was coming through the communication system. All senior staff report to War Room 7 immediately. Priority Alpha protocols are in effect. The 5 humans walked through corridors filled with aliens from dozens of species. Saurian warriors moved, with military precision. Etherian crystals floated past like living art. Beings that looked like metal spiders clicked across the walls. War Room 7 was a vast chamber filled with holographic displays. Star maps showed the current tactical situation. Red zones marked Void Seeker attacks. Blue zones showed allied positions. The red was spreading faster than anyone had expected. High Marshal Vextar stood at the center of the room. His reptilian face showed stress cracks around his yellow eyes. Commander Zeloth hovered nearby, her crystal body dim with worry. Council members, we have lost contact with 4 more systems. The Kepler Defense Fleet has gone silent. Admiral Thorax Battle Group reports enemy contacts but cannot engage. The Void Seekers are moving faster than our intelligence predicted. Xyloth's voice chimed like broken glass. Our scout networks are compromised. The enemy appears to know our fleet positions before we deploy them. Standard reconnaissance methods are failing. Vextar activated a new display. It showed planned defensive positions throughout the sector. We will establish a defensive perimeter around the core worlds. Fortress stations at key jump points. Overlapping fields of fire. The enemy will have to come through our strongest positions to reach the inner systems. Tai-Ho studied the display. The defensive plan was logical, well-organized, and completely predictable. Any enemy with basic intelligence gathering could see where the strong points were and simply avoid them. High Marshal, Tai-Ho said. May I ask how long you expect this defense to hold? Our analysts estimate 6 months minimum. Perhaps longer if we can force them into decisive battles at our prepared positions. And if they do not cooperate with your plans? Silence fell across the room. Several alien officers turned to stare at the human section. Vextar's tail moved in slow patterns that might have been anger or confusion. What do you mean, Admiral Kim? Boram stepped forward. The enemy has avoided every direct confrontation so far. They strike isolated targets and disappear. Why would they suddenly start attacking fortified positions? Because they will have no choice, Commander Xyloth said. Her crystal body flashed with confident light. We will force them to engage our main fleets. How? Dayun asked. The question hung in the air without an answer. Zeloth's body dimmed again. Woo-Jin cleared his throat diplomatically. High Marshal, my government has authorized me to share certain information that might be relevant to our current situation. Every being in the room focused on him. The ambassador had been quiet during most military discussions. Now he had their complete attention. My colleagues have analyzed the Void Seeker attack patterns. We believe we have identified weaknesses in their operational methods. Vextar leaned forward. What kind of weaknesses? Tai-Ho activated his own data pad. Holographic displays showed attack timelines, target selection patterns, and withdrawal routes. The enemy is following a standard hunter methodology. They scout, they strike, they withdraw to safe distance. Very efficient for destroying isolated targets. Very vulnerable to properly planned countermeasures. What kind of countermeasures? Xyloth asked. Boram highlighted sections of the display. They expect their targets to fight back in predictable ways. Large ships in formation. Direct engagement. Maximum firepower focused on their position. When they see this response, they simply phase away and attack somewhere else. So what do you suggest? Vextar's voice carried doubt and desperation in equal measure. Dune smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. We stop fighting the war they want us to fight. We start fighting the war they cannot predict. General Hyunwoo moved to the display controls. New images appeared showing small unit tactics, irregular force deployment, and asymmetric engagement protocols. Instead of fortress stations, we deploy mobile hunter groups. Instead of defensive perimeters, we create false targets and ambush sites. Instead of protecting everything, we make the enemy afraid to attack anything. The alien officers stared at the tactical displays with growing confusion. These were not the clean, organized battle plans they understood. These looked chaotic and dangerous. "This is not warfare," Xyloth said. "This is barbarism." "This is effectiveness," Taeho replied. "The enemy has superior technology and mobility. Direct confrontation will always favor them. But they have weaknesses: overconfidence, predictable behavior patterns, limited intelligence gathering." Vextar studied the human proposals with obvious reluctance. "These tactics are dishonorable. We do not fight from hiding. We do not use deception as a primary weapon. How many more fleets are you willing to lose to maintain your honor?" Da'un asked. Thiko. Question struck like a physical blow. Vextar's yellow eyes narrowed. His claws extended slightly from his hands. "You forget yourself, human." "I forget nothing. I remember that 80,000 beings died yesterday because the enemy knew exactly what you would do and exactly how you would do it." Tension filled the room like electricity before a storm. Alien hands moved toward weapons. The humans remained calm and ready. Wu Jin stepped between the groups. "High Marshal, we are not questioning your courage or your honor. We are offering alternative approaches that might save lives. Alternative approaches that have never been tested in galactic warfare," Commander Xyloth said. "Neither have the Void Seekers," Boram pointed out. "They fought the same enemies using the same tactics 1,000 years ago. They have never faced human military doctrine." Vextar looked around the room at his officers. Their faces showed doubt and fear. 3 major fleet actions had ended in complete disaster. Traditional methods were failing. "What exactly are you proposing?" Taeho stepped forward. "Give us a small task force. Let us test our methods against the enemy. If we fail, you lose a few ships instead of entire fleets. If we succeed, you learn new ways to fight this war. And if your unconventional methods make things worse," Daeun's smile returned. "High Marshal, how could things possibly get worse than they already are?" The reptilian commander stared at the tactical displays showing human military doctrine. Everything about it violated proper military procedure. It was disorganized, unpredictable, and completely contrary to civilized warfare. It was also the only new idea anyone had offered. "Very well. You will have Task Force Omega. 12 ships, mixed composition. You will operate in Sector 7 under full tactical independence. But understand this, Admiral Kim. If your methods endanger allied forces or civilian populations, I will personally court-martial every human officer in this fleet." "Understood, High Marshal. We will not let you down." As the meeting broke up, alien officers gathered in small groups to whisper about the strange new tactics. None of them understood what the humans planned to do. The 5 human officers walked toward their temporary quarters in comfortable silence. They had work to do and very little time to do it. "How long before they realize what we are really planning?" Wu Jin asked. "Long enough," Taeho replied. "By the time they understand, it will be too late to stop us." The stealth ship Ghost Runner drifted through space like a shadow made of metal. Captain Ji-hoon Kang sat in the command chair watching sensor displays that showed nothing but empty darkness. His ship was invisible to most scanning systems, a gift of human engineering that the aliens had dismissed as primitive. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, whispered his sensor operator. "Void Seeker patrol 3 ships moving toward the Helios colony." Ji-hoon studied the tactical display. The enemy ships moved in perfect formation, their dark hulls almost invisible against the starfield. They were hunting, searching for targets that would fight back in predictable ways. "Do not engage," Ji-hoon ordered. "Follow them. Keep maximum distance. I want to know everything about how they hunt." Lieutenant Su Jin-yu looked up from her intelligence station. "Sir, the colony has 40,000 civilians. If we do not warn them..." "The colony already knows. They evacuated 12 hours ago. What the Void Seekers will find is an empty trap, filled with sensors and recording devices." Task Force Omega had been operating for 2 weeks. 12 human ships scattered across 3 sectors, doing things that made alien observers very uncomfortable. They did not fight. They watched. They learned. They prepared. Admiral Tae-ho Kim stood in the command center of the human flagship Indomitable. Screens around him showed the positions of every ship in his small fleet. Unlike the organized formations favored by galactic militaries, his ships moved in seemingly random patterns. Captain Boram Lee approached with the latest intelligence reports. "The Void Seekers hit 6 more targets in the past 48 hours. Same pattern every time. Scout, attack, withdraw. They are getting more confident." "Good," Tae-ho said. "Confident enemies make mistakes." General Hyun-woo Song entered the command center carrying field reports from the outer colonies. His ground teams had been busy preparing surprises for anyone who might visit abandoned settlements. "The colonists do not understand why we told them to leave," Hyun-woo said. "They think we abandoned them to the enemy." "They will understand later," Fleet Admiral Da-Yun Choi replied. She was studying patrol routes and attack patterns on a 3-dimensional display. "Right now the enemy thinks they are winning. Let them keep thinking that." On the bridge of Ghost Runner, Ji-hoon watched the Void Seeker patrol approach the Helios colony. The enemy ships moved with absolute confidence. They had destroyed dozens of targets without facing any real resistance. "They are scanning the colony now," Sujin reported. "Energy signatures show normal power levels, normal life support, normal communication traffic. All false signals generated by human electronic warfare specialists." The colony looked occupied and defenseless. Perfect prey for hunters who had grown used to easy kills. The Void Seekers began their attack run, energy weapons charged, shields configured for maximum protection. They expected return fire from the colony defense platforms. Instead, they got something completely different. "Now," Ji-hoon whispered. Hidden sensors throughout the colony activated. Every scanner, every recorder, every piece of surveillance equipment that human engineers could build focused on the attacking ships. In 60 seconds, the humans learned more about Void Seeker technology than the Galactic Alliance had discovered in 1,000 years. The enemy ships destroyed the empty colony and vanished into phase space. They left behind a treasure of intelligence, data, and 3 very confused Void Seeker commanders who could not understand why their sensors were detecting strange energy signatures where nothing should exist. Sergeant Min-ho John crouched in the ruins of mining station Kappa 7. His special forces team had been here for 5 days, turning the abandoned facility into something the galaxy had never seen before. "Final charges are set," reported his demolitions expert. "When they come to investigate, this place will teach them a lesson about human engineering." Min-ho nodded. The mining station looked completely destroyed from the outside. Void Seeker scans would show twisted metal, dead power systems, and no signs of life. What they would not show were the 40 human soldiers hiding in shielded bunkers throughout the facility. "Remember, we are not here to win a battle," Min-ho told his team. "We are here to make them afraid. Every shadow, every sound, every moment they spend here should make them wonder what else might be waiting." His communication system activated. Admiral Tae-ho's voice came through the encrypted channel. "Omega 7, this is Omega Actual. Enemy, patrol inbound to your position. 3 ships, standard hunting formation. Execute Operation Nightmare. Copy Omega Actual. Nightmare is go." The Void Seeker ships materialized near the mining station exactly as predicted. They had come to investigate the facility they had destroyed 2 weeks earlier. Standard procedure called for verification that targets remained destroyed. They found the station exactly as they had left it. Broken metal, dead systems, No signs of life or resistance. Then the screaming started. Human psychological warfare specialists had filled the station with sounds that triggered fear responses in most known species. Voices that seemed to come from nowhere. Mechanical noises that suggested hidden machinery. Electronic signals that made sensor systems report impossible readings. The Void Seeker boarding party that entered the station found corridors that shifted and changed, lights that flickered in patterns designed to cause anxiety, rooms that seemed normal until they tried to leave and found the exits had moved. Min-Ho's soldiers struck from concealment using weapons the enemy had never encountered, projectile weapons that fired physical ammunition through energy shields, explosive devices that activated based on movement patterns, traps that used the enemy's own technology against them. For the first time in 1,000 years, Void Seekers found themselves in a fight where they did not control every variable. Backs. On the Indomitable, Tejo watched tactical displays showing the results of his unconventional campaign. Void Seeker attack patterns were changing. They moved more cautiously. They spent more time scanning targets. They hesitated before committing to attacks. They are learning to be afraid, Boram observed. Fear makes predators less effective. Admiral Dayun studied intelligence reports from across the task force area of operations. 17 Void Seeker patrols have altered their routes to avoid areas where we have been active. They are starting to recognize that something has changed. Ambassador Woojin Park entered the command center carrying messages from the Galactic Council. His diplomatic expression showed carefully controlled concern. The alien commanders are asking questions about our methods, he reported. High Marshal Vextar wants detailed reports on all task force activities. What kind of questions? Tejo asked. They want to know why we are not protecting civilian populations. They want to know why we are abandoning strategic positions. They want to know why our casualty reports are so low. And what did you tell them? I told them that human military doctrine is classified information that will be shared when appropriate. General Hyun-woo looked up from his tactical planning station. How long before they demand to observe our operations directly? Soon, Woojin replied. Commander Zeloth is particularly concerned about what she calls our dishonorable tactics. Da-un smiled the dangerous smile that meant she was thinking about things that would make enemies very unhappy. Let them observe. By then it will be too late for them to stop what we have started. On mining station Kappa 7, the Void Seeker boarding party was discovering that humans had turned psychological warfare into an art form. Every corridor contained surprises designed to break down enemy confidence. Every room held traps that made the attackers question their own senses. Min-Ho's team struck like ghosts. They appeared, attacked, and vanished before the enemy could respond. They used the station's modified life support systems to fill rooms with sounds and smells that triggered instinctive fear responses. The Void Seekers had superior technology, but they had never faced an enemy that fought primarily to destroy. Their will to fight. Omega 7 to Omega Actual, Min-Ho reported. Enemy boarding party is withdrawing to their ships. They are transmitting what appears to be distress calls. Copy, Omega 7. Let them go. The lesson is more valuable than the kills. The 3 Void Seeker ships retreated from the mining station faster than they had ever retreated from anything. Their crews transmitted reports about impossible phenomena and enemies that seemed to exist in multiple places at once. For the first time in their 1,000-year history, Void Seekers began to doubt their own superiority. Captain Ji-hoon's Ghost Runner continued its silent observation mission. His crew had documented 17 different Void Seeker patrol patterns and identified weaknesses in their scanning procedures. Sir, Sujin reported, we are receiving transmissions between enemy ships. They are discussing whether some of their recent encounters might have been with unknown hostile forces. Unknown hostile forces, Ji-hoon repeated. They do not even have a name for what we are doing to them. Should we engage them directly? No. Let them wonder. Let them fear. Let them make mistakes because they no longer trust their own intelligence. The Ghost Runner continued its hunt, following prey that was slowly learning what it felt like to be hunted. Admiral Tejo studied the latest reports from his scattered task force. Every human ship was reporting the same thing. Void seeker behavior patterns were changing. They moved more carefully. They scanned more thoroughly. They hesitated before attacking. They are adapting, he told his staff. But they are adapting to fight an enemy they do not understand. Every change they make is based on incomplete information. How long before they figure out what we are really doing? Boram asked. Long enough, Daun replied. By the time they understand human warfare, we will have moved on to tactics they cannot imagine. The first phase of Operation Nightmare was complete. The Void Seekers had learned to fear the unknown. Now it was time to teach them why that fear was justified. The hunters had become the hunted. They just did not know it yet. The captured Void Seeker facility hung in space like a broken crown. Its dark metal surfaces bore scars from human assault tactics that the enemy had never seen before. Colonel Unjihan walked through corridors filled with beings that had terrorized the galaxy for 1,000 years. Now they cowered in detention cells, staring at walls with eyes that had seen too much. The psychological profiles are complete, reported her aide. 17 subjects, all showing signs of severe mental trauma. They keep asking about the voices in the walls. Yunji nodded. The voices had been her idea. Sound frequencies that triggered fear responses, played at random intervals through the facility's communication system. Simple, effective, and completely beyond the enemy's understanding. Have they said anything useful about their command structure? They refuse to believe we are real. 3 of them insist we are some kind of hallucination created by their own guilt. 2 others claim we are demons from their ancient mythology. And the rest? They just scream. Admiral Taeho Kim stood in the main briefing room aboard the Galactic Council flagship. Around him sat every senior commander in the Allied fleet. High Marshal Vextar looked older than he had 3 weeks ago. Commander Zeloth's crystal body had lost much of its inner light. The tactical displays showed a galaxy in transition. Red zones marked Void Seeker territory, but for the first time in months, the red was not expanding. Some areas had even turned back to blue. Task Force Omega has achieved something we thought impossible, Vextar admitted. His reptilian voice carried grudging respect and obvious confusion. The enemy advance has stopped. In some sectors, they have actually withdrawn. How? Commander Zyloth asked. Her chiming voice held notes of fear and wonder. Your ships are outnumbered 50 to 1. Your technology is centuries behind theirs. By every tactical analysis, you should have been destroyed. In the first engagement, Ambassador Woojin Park stood to address the assembly. His diplomatic uniform looked strange among the military dress of the other species, but his voice carried absolute authority. Honored council members, my government has authorized me to share certain historical information that may explain recent events. The chamber fell silent. Every being present focused on the human ambassador. The official records show that humanity achieved interstellar travel through peaceful scientific advancement. This information is incomplete. Woojin activated a holographic display showing Earth's timeline. Images appeared of cities, technology, and what looked like a normal planetary civilization. Earth's surface shows signs of massive warfare dating back 50,000 years. Nuclear craters, biological weapon test sites, entire continents scarred by conflicts that would have destroyed most species completely. Gasps and clicking sounds filled the chamber. Several aliens made noises that translators could not interpret. We did not achieve space travel despite being peaceful, Woojin continued. We achieved it because we had perfected warfare to such a degree that we nearly destroyed ourselves. Every advancement in human technology came from military necessity. Captain Boram Lee activated additional displays showing human military history, battles, weapons, strategies that spanned millennia of constant conflict. Other species developed warfare as an extension of politics, she explained. Humans developed warfare as an art form dedicated to the complete neutralization of threats. High Marshal Vextar leaned forward in his seat. Are you saying that your entire civilization is built around military conflict? We are saying that. Every human alive today is descended from survivors of wars that would have ended other species, Fleet Admiral Da Yun Choi replied. We did not learn to fight. We evolved to fight. The implications struck the chamber like a physical blow. Beings that had thought themselves militarily superior were realizing they had been dealing with a species that treated war as natural as breathing. Colonel Yunji entered the briefing room carrying data pads filled with intelligence gathered from captured Void Seekers. Her psychological warfare techniques had broken enemy agents that had resisted conventional interrogation for centuries. The prisoners have provided detailed information about Void Seeker command structure, technology, and strategic planning, she reported. They believe we are supernatural entities because our tactics do not match anything in their military databases. What kind of tactics? Commander Ziloth asked. Yunji activated her own displays. Images showed human operations that had taken place over the past 3 weeks. Ambushes, deceptions, psychological operations, and strategies that seemed to violate every principle of civilized warfare. We do not fight to capture territory or destroy enemy equipment, she explained. We fight to break the enemy's will to continue fighting. Every operation is designed to make them doubt their own superiority. General Hyun Woo Song stepped forward with reports from ground operations throughout the contested zones. Human forces have turned 47 abandoned facilities into psychological warfare training grounds. Enemy boarding parties encounter scenarios designed to destroy their confidence and make them question their own senses. This is barbaric, Ziloth protested. Warfare should be conducted with honor, with rules, with respect for the enemy. Should it? Da-un asked quietly. How many of your people have died following those rules? The question hung in the air without answer. Admiral Tae-ho activated the main tactical display. It showed the current strategic situation across multiple sectors. The Void Seekers are not retreating because we have destroyed their fleets. They are retreating because they no longer understand the nature of the conflict. For 1,000 years, they have fought enemies who responded predictably to superior technology and firepower. And now? Vextar asked. Now they face an enemy that turns their own strengths into weaknesses. An enemy that fights without honor, without rules, without the limitations that have defined galactic warfare for millennia. Captain Ji-hoon Kang entered the briefing room with intelligence reports from his stealth operations. His ships had been shadowing Void Seeker patrols and gathering data on enemy communications. Void Seeker command structure is breaking down, he reported. Their patrol leaders are requesting permission to avoid areas where human forces might be present. Some patrols have refused direct orders to investigate abandoned facilities. They are becoming afraid to fight, Boram observed. Fear is a weapon that works on every species. Colonel Yunji displayed psychological profiles of captured enemies. The Void Seekers achieved dominance through technological superiority and predictable tactics. They have never faced an enemy that adapts faster than they can respond. Every human military doctrine is based on one principle, Tae-ho explained. There are no rules in war except victory. While other species developed warfare as politics by other means, humans developed it as survival by any means necessary. The alien commanders stared at the tactical displays with growing understanding and horror. They were not dealing with a primitive species learning galactic warfare. They were dealing with a species that had mastered warfare before leaving their home planet. Your entire approach to conflict is different from ours, Vextar said slowly. We fight to achieve specific objectives. You fight to eliminate threats completely. Correct, Da-yun replied. A threat that survives today becomes a greater threat tomorrow. Human military thinking focuses on permanent solutions to strategic problems. Commander Ziloth's crystal body flickered with nervous energy. How many of these psychological warfare techniques do you possess? All of them, Colonel Yunji answered. Every method of breaking enemy morale that has been developed over 50,000 years of constant warfare. The Void Seekers have experienced perhaps 1% of human military capability. 1%? Ziloth's voice rose to a frequency that made the air vibrate. We have been testing basic tactics against an enemy we do not fully understand, Tae-ho explained. Once we have complete intelligence on their capabilities and weaknesses, We will implement strategies they cannot counter or predict. General Hyun-woo activated displays showing planned operations for the next phase of the campaign. The images showed tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare and promised to be devastatingly effective. The enemy expects us to fight for territory, resources, and strategic positions, he said. Instead, we will fight for something they cannot understand or defend against. Which is, Vexitar asked, their sanity. The briefing room fell into absolute silence. Every alien present understood that they were not looking at military plans. They were looking at instruments designed to destroy an enemy's ability to function as a coherent force. Ambassador Wu Jin closed his datapad and looked around the chamber at faces that showed mixtures of awe, fear, and respect. Council members, you now understand why humanity was reluctant to share our military capabilities during first contact. We are not a peaceful species that learned to fight. We are a fighting species that learned to be peaceful. And the Void Seekers? Commander Zeloth asked quietly. Admiral Taeho smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. The Void Seekers are about to learn what happens when predators encounter something higher on the food chain. They think they know war because they have superior technology and have dominated weaker enemies for 1,000 years. The Void Seeker homeworld appeared on the tactical displays like a wound in space itself. Dark energy surrounded the massive planet, creating distortions that made normal navigation impossible. For 1,000 years, this world had been the source of terror that swept across the galaxy in waves of destruction. Admiral Taeho Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable watching approach vectors calculated by human navigation specialists. His fleet had grown from 12 ships to over 300 as alien forces volunteered to serve under human command. They had seen the results of human warfare and wanted to learn. Final approach in 30 minutes, reported Captain Bo-Ram Lee. All task forces report ready for Operation Endgame. Taeho nodded. The operation would not be a glorious final battle between massive fleets. It would be something the Void Seekers had never experienced and could not defend against. General Hyun-woo Song monitored ground assault preparations from his command station. His forces were not preparing to capture territory or destroy enemy installations. They were preparing to end the Void Seekers' ability to function as a military force. Psychological warfare teams are in position, he reported. Electronic warfare specialists have identified primary communication nodes. Special operations units are ready to begin infiltration protocols. Fleet Admiral Da-Yun Choi studied intelligence reports from the captured Void Seeker facility. Her analysts had broken down enemy command structure, identified key leadership positions, and mapped psychological weaknesses that could be exploited. The enemy leadership operates on principles of absolute dominance, she explained to the senior staff. They have never faced defeat and do not have protocols for dealing with sustained resistance. Their entire command structure will collapse once they realize they cannot control the engagement. Captain Ji-Hoon Kang's stealth ships had been observing the homeworld for 2 weeks. His reconnaissance teams had identified defensive positions, patrol routes, and communication networks that the enemy believed were hidden. Void Seeker planetary defenses are configured to repel direct assault by conventional fleets, he reported. They have overlapping energy shields, massive orbital weapons platforms, and fighter squadrons numbering in the thousands, all of which become irrelevant when the enemy refuses to attack them directly, Colonel Eun Ji-han observed. Her psychological warfare specialists had been preparing something that would break the Void Seekers without firing a single shot at their defenses. Ambassador Woo Jin Park stood with the human commanders as they prepared for the final phase of their campaign. The Galactic Council had authorized unlimited human authority in the conduct of this operation. They no longer questioned human methods. High Marshal Vexitar sends his regards, Wu Jin reported. The alien fleet commanders are maintaining safe distance as requested. They want to observe but not interfere with human tactical doctrine. Good, Taeho replied. They are about to see why humanity survived 50,000 years of constant warfare. The first phase of Operation Endgame began not with weapons fire but with silence. Human electronic warfare specialists began systematically disrupting Void Seeker communications across the entire homeworld. Every transmission became uncertain, Every order became questionable. Every report became suspect. Colonel Yunji's psychological warfare teams launched their primary assault against enemy morale. Instead of attacking Void Seeker positions, they attacked Void Seeker confidence. Transmissions filled with sounds that triggered fear responses flooded their communication networks. Images that suggested human forces were everywhere appeared on their tactical displays. The Void Seekers responded exactly as human analysts had predicted. They consolidated their forces into defensive positions and waited for the human attack. That would never come. General Hyunwoo's ground teams began infiltrating the planet through methods the enemy had never encountered. Instead of landing assault troops in obvious locations, human forces appeared in civilian areas, abandoned facilities, and places the Void Seekers considered secure. They did not capture territory, they captured minds. Every Void Seeker who encountered human forces found themselves facing psychological warfare techniques perfected over millennia of human conflict. Enemies who seemed to be everywhere and nowhere. Attacks that came from directions that should have been impossible. Tactics that made no sense according to civilized warfare, but proved devastatingly effective. Captain Boram coordinated the electronic warfare campaign from the Indomitable's battle bridge. Her specialists had turned the Void Seekers' own technology against them. Every sensor reading became unreliable. Every tactical display showed conflicting information. Every automated system began reporting impossible data. Enemy command structure is fragmenting, she reported. Regional commanders are requesting orders that Central Command cannot provide because they no longer trust their own intelligence networks. On the planet's surface, Sergeant Minho John led special operations teams through Void Seeker command facilities that had been turned into nightmares of confusion and fear. His soldiers moved like ghosts through corridors filled with enemies who could no longer distinguish between reality and deception. Target acquired, he reported over encrypted communications. Void Seeker High Command facility is secured. Leadership is contained but not eliminated. The final phase of the operation was not a battle, but a demonstration. Human forces brought captured Void Seeker leaders to a secure location where Colonel Unji waited, with something that would end the war without destroying another ship. You have fought wars for 1,000 years, she told the assembled enemy commanders. You have dominated through superior technology and predictable tactics. You have never faced an enemy that considers warfare to be an evolutionary necessity, the EU. Void Seeker leadership stared at her with eyes that had seen their entire military doctrine rendered useless in a matter of weeks. Their technological advantages meant nothing against an enemy that refused to engage their strengths directly. We offer you a choice, Yunji continued. Surrender now and your species survives to rebuild in peace. Continue fighting and discover what humanity does to threats that cannot be reasoned with. To demonstrate her point, she activated displays, showing human military capabilities that had not yet been used. Weapons that could destroy planets, strategies that could eliminate entire species, tactics that made their current psychological warfare look gentle by comparison. This is what humans developed when we thought we might lose, she explained. Every technique you have experienced represents our basic approach to conflict resolution. You have not seen what we do when survival is actually threatened. The Void Seeker commanders looked at tactical analyses that showed human forces positioned throughout their territory. Every strategic position was compromised. Every defensive advantage was neutralized. Every military asset was under threat from enemies they could not locate or predict. For the first time in their species' history, the Void Seekers realized they were not the apex predators they had believed themselves to be. Admiral Tae-ho received the surrender transmission while standing on the observation deck of his flagship. The message was simple and complete. Void Seeker forces would withdraw from all conquered territories and submit to Galactic Council authority. Why did they surrender? Asked Commander Xyloth, who had been observing the operation from a safe distance. Their defensive positions were still intact. Their fleet was still operational. Because they finally understood what they were fighting, Tae-ho replied. For 1,000 years they fought enemies who followed the same rules they did. Honorable combat, predictable strategies, limited objectives. He turned to face the alien commander whose crystal body flickered with confused light. They surrendered because they realized they were not fighting for territory or resources. They were fighting for their continued existence against a species that has spent 50,000 years perfecting the art of making enemies stop fighting. Fleet Admiral Dayun joined them at the observation window. The Void Seekers achieved dominance by being more advanced than their enemies, but advancement means nothing when your opponent refuses to fight the kind of war you understand. So this is human warfare, High Marshal Vextar said over the communication system. His reptilian voice carried a mixture of respect and fear. Not superior technology or individual courage, but the willingness to do whatever is necessary to achieve victory. Correct, Tejo replied. Other species develop military doctrine to support their political objectives. Humans develop it to eliminate threats permanently. The Void Seekers were a threat. Now they are not. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy began to understand what had happened. The most feared enemy in known history had been defeated not through superior firepower but through superior thinking. Human forces had turned every Void Seeker strength into a weakness, and every advantage into a vulnerability. The Galactic Council viewed humanity with new eyes. They were not the primitive newcomers who had stumbled into space travel. They were a species that had mastered warfare so completely that they made it look easy. Ambassador Wu Jin addressed the council chambers one final time as the crisis came to an end. Council members, you thought you knew war because you fought with honor, with established rules, with predictable strategies based on technological advantage. But war is not about honor or rules or technology. He paused, looking around the chamber at faces that showed new understanding. War is about making your enemy stop fighting by any means necessary. That is something humans learned long before we reached the stars. The Void Seekers discovered what every threat to humanity eventually learns. Which is? Commander Zeloth asked quietly. Tejo's voice carried across the chamber with absolute certainty. That when humans say we will end a threat, we do not mean we will defeat it. We mean we will make it cease to exist as a threat. The Void Seekers thought they knew war because they had superior technology and had dominated weaker enemies. They were wrong. They had never seen anything yet. The galaxy was safe. The Void Seekers had learned why humanity had survived every challenge their homeworld had thrown at them. And the Galactic Council had learned why some species become predators while others become survivors. Humanity had just taught the galaxy the difference.